Call the meeting to order. This is the May 20th, 2024 meeting of the regular meeting of the BET. I call it to order at 6:33 PM. Would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Before I take up the first item, I just want to note was a slight oversight on putting SL2 on the agenda. So we will skip that because it was handled adequately at the Budget Committee level. The second order of business is declare the public hearing open for the Community Development Block Grant Program Year 2024 budget. That public hearing is now open. It will remain open until we close it after the treasurer's report. So if anybody has anything to say, please let us know during that. I don't think anybody's here for it, but anyway. Next item is the assessor's report.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow members of the BET. I'd like to present the assessor's report for May 2024. The senior and disabled property tax relief application deadline was this past Wednesday, May 15th. Our estimates at the moment are roughly that 435 seniors and disabled persons will qualify for this relief this year. That's down from 463 that we had last year. Once you all give me a mill rate this evening, I will then be able to calculate the actual and the reductions and as to how much that will cost the town of Greenwich. The one thing I'd also like to note this year is that the volunteer firefighters credit has been raised from $1,000 to $2,000. So depending upon how many, I don't know exactly the tax impact of that, but I think it's estimated around $52,000 this year versus the 25 from last year. Income and expense information. Information is due to this office by June 1st. Since June 1st is a Saturday, it will be due June 3rd this year. That is the information that we get from landlords disclosing their rental information. And to date, there's only been 2 tax appeals filed against the town of Greenwich on the grand list of 2023. The deadline was 2 months from March 11th. It is my assumption I have not seen any other tax appeals filed, so I'm assuming that we only had 2 this year. But I will verify that in my June report. Do I have any questions this evening? Yes.
Do you have any reason to, do you know why the number of elderly property tax credits have declined? It sounds like it's off about 6 or 7%.
Well, we do have, as we, usually we do have a number of people that pass away or sell their properties. We did notice this year we had a number of people that were over income. And it was close, but they were over the $80,000 income from as the ceiling this year. So when that happens, we make sure that they come in next year, just in case their income has subsequently reduced below the income levels. But that's usually what happens.
Is that attributable to the strong market?
Yes, I would imagine so.
Right.
Yeah, and we did have, for a long time, we did have quite elderly people on this program. We had people well into their 90s. And unfortunately, they've either sold their property or they've had to move into some sort of assisted living or something else.
Anybody else? So go ahead, Lizzie, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to just
move
move that we accept the assessor's report.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we accept the assessor's report. Is there any objection to unanimous consent on that? Seeing none, it's 12-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move to requests for budget adjustments, and we have 2 routine ones, which if Karen, you would read, please.
Yes, I'm moving the following items. AC1, Aging Commission, $350,000. Approval to use the Connecticut ARPA funds and FWC Wallace Center funds for a Wallace Center renovation. And GL1 Library, $55,000. Approval to use a gift from Friends of Greenwich Library for a van.
And I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. These are routine items. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, those are approved 12-0-0. Now move to the non-routine items. If you would read PW 6, please.
So our first item is PW 6.
Karen, read.
No, I'll read the
Oh,
non-routine.
I'm
They come
sorry.
from the budget.
I
Do
lose track. Go ahead.
you want me to continue?
Go ahead and continue.
I move PW 6 to DPW for $500,000. It's an additional appropriation for transportation safety action plan, and it includes a $400,000 grant.
I'll
Do
second.
we have a second?
I'll second.
From Leslie Moriarty, moved by Leslie Tarkington.
So this
Report of
is,
the budget.
this is a proposed combination grant of $400,000. And I'm moving, I lost my marker here. And $100,000 of funds from, I guess, our capital non-recurring fund. And this was discussed at the Budget Committee. It's a town-wide study for improved safety conditions. And at the Budget Committee, the vote was 2-1-1. And this motion passed.
Okay, we have the first selectman here who I believe wants to speak on that. Do you want to go first, Fred? Before Amy gets drilled?
Drilled. Should I run now? Go ahead, by all means.
I'll be quick. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the BET and guests. As you heard the other day when I spoke before the Budget Committee, Connecticut is coming off its deadliest year ever when it comes to pedestrian fatalities. Greenwich has unfortunately not escaped that. This is in keeping with that, to focus on what we told people we would focus on. DPW has been going around, meeting with every single neighborhood in town, and I think you've had over 300 comments so far, and I think over 300 people so far have attended, hearing the same thing. And this is bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats. I repeat, Republicans and Democrats are emailing us. The latest came today from the Round Hill Association, asking that we focus on pedestrian safety and making these roads safer. This is all over 67 square miles, second biggest land mass in the town, in the state of Connecticut. This is in keeping with that. We cannot, if you reject this, okay, in order to get implementation grants, you have to have these study grants. So if you reject this, that puts everything else in danger. But there really is no, this is a layup. This is really no reason. We're getting 80% of it back. But again, even if we were getting $0 back, this is public safety. You've heard from the people of Greenwich on this, so I hope that you will do the right thing tonight. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Commissioner Siebert, do you have any prepared remarks or?
No, we just came tonight, three of us came, so Jim is sorry he couldn't be here, so takes three of us to cover what he knows about all this, but we'll do our best. So.
Comment. Does anybody have any questions for the commissioner?
I would like to make a motion that we approve it, the 500,000.
I've already moved, and
It's already moved and
I've already
seconded.
moved, and Leslie seconded it.
So let's, I
Well,
would,
before that, David, we would have discussion among ourselves. Scott, do you have something?
I have a question. How many meetings have you held so far in the town regarding, traffic and pedestrian safety? or relative to this? And how many, more meetings would you anticipate having?
We've had 6 so far, and we anticipate, I can't tell you exactly how many more we would expect, but we certainly expect several more as you unfold this and unpack this process, and you're talking to different neighborhoods and proceeding with ideas and thoughts around what may be recommendations coming out of this. And of course, any recommendations, as you folks all know, whenever you get an idea about doing a project here, there's quite a process, right? For any project, going through town processes as well as public meetings and so forth. So lots of opportunities for discussion.
And there's also a data, so the town meetings are to survey town residents, but I'm not sure that that's also the other part. There's the data gathering component here to analyze crashes or fatalities or other issues to try and figure out where the hot spots are, and also trying to understand where we actually could do things and where we couldn't. And
Yes,
I mean,
he's hired. Can you add a position to our table of organization? Yeah, that's a good summary.
so how do we get that? How do we analyze that data? Do you have somebody in mind who would execute that for us?
We do not yet have that entity selected. We would go out through an RFP process to look at various consultants. There are many that are interested in this. I forget how many responded to even one of our local communities, but there's quite a number of very good, solid outfits that can do this work with us.
Mr. Phelps, please.
I've certainly heard myself, citizens talk about this to the issues that Mr. Camillo raised. I've heard the concern from the community. I think it would be helpful if you could tell all of us and the public, to the extent that it is listening, what the process is, how this grant goes, what the next steps are, sort of how, a bigger picture of what the department envisions in terms of both this study and what follows it.
So what we've talked about is that this creates, again, this comprehensive plan. We called it the Comprehensive Transportation Safety Action Plan, which is quite a mouthful. But by looking at data, by looking at community input, by looking at engineering, guidelines, regulations, all of those things, putting them together and kind of, I've been saying, shaking and baking out a plan, an idea of what are the easy things to do, what are mid-range things to do, what might be very long-term goals. You can create a framework for things that you might do. Now, again, we don't know yet from the plan exactly what it is going to come out of it, right? We've heard already in our discussions, many people asking for things that are enforcement, and that's the police department. That's why we have a multi-entity task force, right? We have planning and zoning and fire and police and all meeting with us and listening to the community. So there's going to be a kind of a grab bag of, things to analyze and pull together. So I think what I see from Public Works side of things are going to be, is this an area where there is, an area we need to look at for what? Is it a better issue with, is it signal timing and control? Is it a section of sidewalk in a downtown area that needs some extension or some adjustment? Is it a one-way plan for something? Is it a speed control sign? As we talked about here, a lot of times, what could we do more with the speed signs that remind us to slow down? It's going to be a bit of a grab bag. If you see something that's a bigger project, say it was a intersection realignment that everyone could agree on, we understand that that's a larger capital investment, and that might be further out into the future. That can be more complicated, more approval processes and so forth. So the idea is to get that plan laid out, and again, have, discussions as we go with these things. We were encouraged, and we will continue to use our public works liaisons as we go through all this, and I'm sure there'll be more chances for discussion. The idea is to keep some back and forth going. We always get lots of back and forth anyway about traffic because, as Fred said, it is a very popular topic.
And do you have an expectation or an understanding as to when you would have gathered this first set of data and be able to report back to the community?
So our goal is to try to do this project in about a 12-month timeframe. I'd say give us 12 to 18, depending on, in case something goes long with meetings or this or that. But our goal is to get the thing done, because the longer you wait around, that's the whole idea too, of getting this grant and moving it with the funds that we're gonna get so that we can use that outsource help to crunch so it's current, and get it done.
I appreciate these responses. I think they help, particularly for the members of the public, understand where we're going with this project. And I think I think some of us knew these answers, but I think hearing them publicly will help public understanding. So I appreciate your answers.
I think the project team is trying to keep things out on the website and keep information out there for people. So if they don't want to listen to us all on the TV too, you can tell people they can go to the project website for a lot of this kind of information.
Ms. Moriarty?
Two of the concerns that I heard when this committee first discussed this project a month ago was one concern about any mandates or requirements that might come out of the data that's been identified. And the second is any biases that might be put in the recommendations. Can you respond to those concerns?
To the best of my knowledge, we have not seen anything saying that there's some kind of federal mandate about what you have to do. What we get to do is a plan that's appropriate for our community. I'm not quite sure what you mean by biases.
And maybe it's more of a lack of understanding of how recommendations are going to be determined and prioritized. A study like this is going to be a lot of data for anybody to manage, and there will be a lot of very small recommendations, maybe larger recommendations, but I would expect in order to have an actionable plan, you're going to have to prioritize it within the recommendation. So I think some of the concerns, and maybe they weren't explicitly stated, but that there'd be a focus on Plan A or part of Town A and not B or C or D or whatever. And how do you, and you've had to deal with this in other studies, how do you deal with trying to keep the objectivity in the final recommendations instead of the action plan?
Well, I think that's part of doing the actual plan, is having all those discussions about that. And I can think back to other plans, as you've mentioned, that we've done for things where you're looking at, are things feasible, are they constructible, trying to put things on a footing about how do you kind of rate and rank projects regardless of whose neighborhood it's in. But I think at the same time too, part of that public input is that there are, and having been here for 20 years in town, there are areas that people don't want fixed. There are things that we might see as engineers that look like they should be fixed, but nobody wants fixed. So you're trying to juggle a lot of these things, right? You're trying to juggle, but you are juggling what people bring into you. I think an astute observation was made by someone else at one of the meetings that these things bring other perspectives, right? They bring things to us that, as engineers for the town, we may look at it and go, gee, that might not have seemed like it's causing the biggest amount of pain for a neighborhood, but let's hear about that. So we're getting a lot of different perspectives on this, but that's going to be part of the planning, is figuring that out. I can't tell you today exactly how it's all going to be prioritized, but that'll be part of the whole process. And I think that's always something we always have to present. I'm thinking a lot in my head of a sidewalk study we did many years ago, where we could look at clear things like pedestrian generators, distance from same, parking, constructability, easements, property lines, things that are pretty concrete that can help you identify, even if something's a high priority, it may not be constructible, and at least then you can explain to someone the issues associated with it. We get asked to do things in certain locations, and we find we frequently have to explain the same things to the public about why it's not possible to do certain things at certain spots. So it can be, these plans are helpful for all of those kinds of issues and matters. But there's going to be hopefully plenty we can do.
Mr. Olczak and then Ms. Jansen.
Thank you. Once you once you complete your study in 12 to 18 months and you formulate your recommendations, the cost of those recommendations will, might they be eligible for reimbursement? And how will you, how will you look at the prioritization of the various different items that you're going to be recommending?
So I think I just spoke to how, on the prioritization, I can't tell you the exact prioritization yet because that's part of the planning, is that's part of the shake and bake process, I'll call it, of setting those out. But what we always do when we see projects that come out of these sorts of plans is we're always looking for funding elsewhere for them, grants for them. And so indeed, that's part of the reason of doing these, is so that you've got a plan, you've got projects, you've got things out there that hopefully folks have. No one's ever going to agree 100%, right? That's not going to happen, but you're going to have enough, feeling that some of these things are a good idea, and then we can look for grants as we move forward. I mean, that's kind of what we do routinely.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes, I have a question. Can you describe what was mentioned in the CIP sheet originally, which said that this project will follow the federal and state guidelines called Complete Streets, and those design principles will be all encompassing in the recommendations in the plan and that recommendation? Can you describe what is Complete Streets in your perspective?
So I think what we've tried to explain to people is that when we look at improvements, we're looking at improvements for not just for one user, right? You're looking at, and again, it's going to depend on what part of town you're in. What are the users of that area? So we are not trying to claim that we're putting a bike lane everywhere, which is what sometimes people see these images of complete streets where they see something that looks like a downtown city street with walkers and bikers and scooters and motorcycles and cars and buses and trams, and I'm probably forgetting some other thing they put on the roadway there, horses, I don't know. That would be nice, but we'll leave that out for now. So, the thing that we try to do is look at, well, who is out using the roads? I'll be honest with you, I was struck by some of the folks talking to us about wanting to walk their roads on roads where I'm like, boy, I wouldn't expect that, I don't know if we're gonna be able to fix it for them, but, you're struck when somebody from, certain backcountry areas or what have you, where you're thinking, gee, they are small roads, or they are tricky to walk on, gee, but they, things like that come out. So we have to figure out, well, is there something we could do? Where's that gonna land? So again, what I think Jim did a better job of explaining it, but we use that as a framework to look at these things, but it does not mean that you have to suddenly take a road and turn it into a road that suddenly looks like some downtown city road, I'll just say. That's not what it's trying to do. So that's what we tried to outline a little better when we wrote you folks the explanation for this. But they want, we think about it. We do want to think about the various users on road. Is there something you can do? We do it routinely today to the extent that we can, even if we're paving, things like that.
Sorry, you go ahead, Ms. Jansen.
I just want to follow up in terms of following those design principles. It seems to be, from the literature I've read, very important to qualify for the grants that would be available for implementation. So some of those are, what I've read, are not related to the design specifically of a bike path. It's much broader and bigger than that. So Complete Streets seems to be a holistic point of view with a lot of different criteria. So I just was wondering, when you're creating this transportation plan, in order to qualify for the subsequent, hopefully, implementation plan grants out there, that just kind of having an understanding of how much this is going to be referring, because it did say on the CIP that that complete street design principles are key to this plan. So it's much bigger than just having a bicycle lane or not.
Yes, I agree, but I'm noting that I was using that as an example.
Ms. Tarkenton and then Mr. Weisbrod.
So, Amy, I think it was November, we approved the multi-use path over in Old Greenwich to Stanford. And in many ways, this could also be considered, we'll call it a prototype example of what might be an outcome of this particular study. I mean, at least you'd have a feel for the study. So, question for you, can you give us, I think I have two questions. What you think your best estimate of the deliverable of that initial study, which is obviously less than a quarter of, it's even I guess, an eighth of what this might be or whatever.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a meeting of the Town of Greenwich Planning and Zoning Commission being held virtually. Today is Tuesday, May 14th. Mr. Levy and Mr. Wells will be absent for most of the meeting, and Ms. Jenkins will be seated for them, as will Ms. Jones, depending on the application. But they are with us right now for the decisions that we are making. Our first item on the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to announce that we have one postponement. That postponement is number 10, the Millbrook Corporation for an outdoor oven at 61 Woodside Drive, an outdoor pizza oven. That item will be postponed. And on this first item, it's 11, that's item number 1114JH LLC for a final coastal site plan and special permit to construct an addition to the rear of the existing hotel and restaurant for seasonal outdoor dining. This is at 1114 East Putnam Avenue, and seated on this application are Albin Macri, Jenkins, Levy, and Yeski. And Mr. Macri, I believe you said yesterday you would have a motion on this. Okay.
Okay, it's 1114 East Putnam Avenue, application PLPZ 2023-487. Applicant is requesting approval to construct a rear entrance canopy addition to the building with a seasonal outdoor dining terrace on top per section 613 to 615-17 of the BZRs and the town of Greenwich in sections 22A 90 and 22A 96 of the Connecticut General Statutes on a 2.22 acre lot located in the LB, PRIOZ, and COZ zones. Whereas the required property came before the commission as a pre-application at the 11/28/24 public hearing under file PLPZ 2022-442, and the establishment is approved for 342 seats in total. The commission finds that the health department issued a memo on 2/20/24 indicating approval of the proposed project. Wetlands issued a permit needs questionnaire on 12/14/23 indicating no action required. ARC issue comments dated 3/20/24 indicating approved is submitted. And the Greenwich Fire Department issued comments on 3/26/24 indicating access to the complete building is not ideal, but issues can be accommodated by department staff. Therefore, a motion to approve the site plan noting the following: prior to zoning permit, the applicant shall provide to secure all necessary planning and zoning requirements per section 6100 of the BZR, all necessary interdepartmental conditions per section 6100 of the BZR. The application is limited to 28 seats on the new terrace, 27 dining seats, and 1 bar seat in the main dining room were removed from the room. The applicant is requesting seating from April 1st to November 20th. The hours of operation will coincide with daily restaurant operations Monday through Sunday, 12 to 9 p.m. And all previous Planning and Zoning Commission site plan and Zoning Board of Appeals variance conditions shall be continued. And the applicant shall address any and all remaining staff or interdepartmental issues.
Mary,
I believe it's 25 seats and 3 at the bar with the 28 seats.
yep,
Okay,
Thank you.
3 at the bar, 25 seats in the room. Okay,
Thank you.
oh, we had reduced that to 1, but Tracy, that's right. All right, okay. The next question was, okay, and is there any further review that we need from fire at all?
from
No.
the information we were provided, it seems that actually
All right.
they, in so many words, they would make it work. It
right.
wasn't ideal, but they'd make it work.
Okay. All righty. Okay, do I have a second for that? Albin, McRae, Jenkins,
Second.
Levy. Levy seconded?
Yeah.
Levy has seconded,
Second.
and Yeski. Mr. McRae, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Jenkins?
Aye.
Mr. Levy?
Aye.
Mr. Yeski?
Aye.
Albin is also aye. And with that, we go to our next item, which is Newfield,
You know, you're going to be, we are, I know you already have meetings and get commentary from different regions in our town, different districts, different areas. But, you know, I'm sure that as we pursue this, you know, if we approve this study and we pursue it, we're going to be getting a lot of different communities saying, we want you to prioritize our community, you know, which is natural. So you're going to have a lot of people stepping up, a lot of communities stepping up saying, you know, we should be the top of the heap, or somebody else will say so. How does this study help us to deal with that? And does it help us to deal with that? How, when we execute this study, does it arm us to be able to respond to people properly with data, you know, with a good answer, or is it going to get messier?
I believe it should make it easier. That's certainly our hope.
And in what way?
Well, again, when you have when you put together a plan that has clearly outlined criteria for evaluating projects and evaluating, short, mid-range, and long-term possibilities, it's a lot easier to have something to point to. That, you've applied certain criteria, as I was alluding to before, is it constructible? Do we have easements? Is it feasible? Does it meet regulations? A lot of people have a lot of interesting ideas. Sometimes we can't build them, or they are not in accordance with, with good regulatory standards for highway safety, so you have to explain that. But in terms of what can be done, the idea is that then you have something that you can point to that has all those clear criteria, I guess I'd say, laid out there. And of course, when you have data behind things and all, it can also be very helpful. Very data-driven, like all communities. Everyone wants to know why, right, for an area.
Thank you.
Mr. Olczak and then Ms. Aurora. I'm sorry, Matt Deschamps.
Thank you,
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Chairman.
I'm looking at the wrong person.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. The funding for these grants, as it's been originally sourced, is the bipartisan infrastructure law, right? That was a bipartisan infrastructure law passed in Congress. This is U.S. transportation grant funding. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so
Thanks for sure. I've used my lifeline.
to the selectman's points, there seems to be bipartisan, nonpartisan, largely universal support in our community for this initiative, right? It was funded in Congress, bipartisan. There's large support in Greenwich for this, regardless of political party. That's our understanding, right? You've seen that throughout all of your community surveys. We've seen that in your hearings as well, that there's just tremendous support throughout the community. And I just have one question there. Of the $5 billion, my understanding is $3 billion is still available. And just to be clear for the public, that funding, that $3 billion of U.S. Transportation Department funding is not available to the town of Greenwich if we do not fund this grant, this SF4A grant, right?
That's our understanding of how they're applying it at this time, yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Aurora?
Thanks, Terry. I just wanted to follow up on something that I think, I'm not sure if Jim sent an email or someone sent an email regarding the assessment from the risk manager at the town and the town attorney, kind of indicating that it was in the town's best interest from a safety perspective to move forward with this grant from a risk safety assessment perspective. Is that something that you have also heard, or is that something?
I don't recall such email.
Okay,
I'm not familiar with it.
I might have been just hearsay from a DPW meeting that some of my colleagues had, but that's generally kind of the consensus that we heard, that maybe there's a reason from a risk control perspective to move forward with this.
I really can't speak to what they might say about it, because we've also had people tell us that we shouldn't do it, because then we would know what's wrong, which didn't seem to make a lot of sense either, seems a little bit ostrich-like.
Yeah.
So I think, all we can say to that and to Matt, to your question is, when people come in, we're not asking them who they are, what they are. We're asking them what they care about, in terms of traffic safety. We care about traffic safety. If you know Jim or you've spent any time with him, it's a big deal. And, Michael Kislak and Gabriela Sarkozy, they care about roadway safety. So that's what this is really about, and trying to look at, that, put a plan together and see it move forward. And if it helps us from a risk management standpoint, hallelujah.
I think, Amy, the point I was trying to go towards, and I'm sorry you don't have I'm asking the wrong person, because, you're obviously not the person who said this, but I'm just trying to understand why specifically this year is the year it's been prioritized and I've made this comment, I think I made it at an RTM meeting, that if there is ever any safety issue or safety concern or project in front of us that is identified for the betterment of our community, whether or not there is a grant, you would find unanimous support, I believe, on this board. It feels as if the grant is what's initiating this discussion. And, I think I heard the first selectman say, whether or not we were getting a reimbursement, this is something we would support. And I've heard other members not say the same, really conversely saying this is being initiated specifically because there is a grant at play. And I just heard my colleague say, there's $3 billion we can tap into, which of course is not, all of it is not available to Greenwich, but it's available to the state of Connecticut. So I'm just trying to, I think what we're trying to really struggle with is if there's a real priority, should this have been identified earlier, and, because there's grants at play that seems to be initiating it, we're trying to understand where the priority of this project is coming from.
I'm not sure if I got a question out of that, that I followed, but I think you're saying we should have come to you sooner with this? Is that what I'm understanding? But I think that
If there were no grant, would this still be a priority for your department?
We would love to do something like this. I think what I would say is that, we know that based on, even what we've seen with our budget and what we understand on our capital budget and what we understand are the pressures as a whole on the town's capital budget, that it's extremely helpful when we get grants for these kinds of things because it helps defray the costs of this kind of work. So we got a grant for it. We thought that was a good thing, and we hope you all think it's a good thing so we can do this work.
Karen?
Yeah, Amy, I just wanted to follow up on two things that you said, that there's no federal mandate for this, under this plan. Isn't it true that there is a template that has 8 components, that this plan must have 8 components to it? So in essence, there is a mandate that in order to be accepted for future grants that it has to contain 8 components?
So the plan, they want you to cover certain things, but what and perhaps I misunderstood the question, but I thought the question was about, because we were asked previously about, does it mandate that we have to, widen our roads? Does it mandate that we have to put bike lanes or do something like that? And the answer to that was no, there's not a federal mandate. The sections of the plan are pretty sensible. And, it's pretty normal for grants. They don't just give you the money and say, go do whatever you want. They give you the money and they're outlining, these are the good chapters or contents of a transportation plan.
And the other thing that I heard, and I'm not sure I understand this either, is that without doing this study or without accepting this money, implementation monies down the road would not be available. Isn't it true that the only entry ticket, if you will, for implementation grants is that we develop a plan? Not necessarily a plan with this grant, but we develop a plan, a safety action plan, if you will, or a comprehensive safety action plan.
Well, I think I would imagine that, yes, if you wanted to do it on your own nickel, they'd be happy to have you do it that way. But I think what they're looking for, it's my understanding that what they're looking for is that an entity have done this work so that then if additional projects are funded, they're coming out of this kind of planning process, if that makes any sense, for this bucket of money, as it were.
And has Greenwich ever done any safety studies or other studies that are not a comprehensive study, but a townwide study, or initiated any policies for safety, traffic safety, et cetera?
Off the top of
DPW?
my head, can't remember one like this for traffic. I remember something from many, many years ago that just looked, that was not nearly as comprehensive as this, did not have public engagement, probably was really much more based on, if memory serves, because I might have even been running the sewer division then, was based, I think, potentially on crash data or some things like that. But we've not had the budget and opportunity to do something quite as comprehensive as this, so this would be very welcome.
And one of the components of this safety action plan focuses on equity. Could you explain to me what your understanding and how we would tackle that within our town?
Well, I think that what we typically do, it speaks to what several of you folks have asked about, which is how are you prioritizing your plan? So when you're prioritizing your plan based on criteria that folks have agreed to and based on data, that helps you determine, what you're doing.
And just to follow up also, part of the plan calls for policy and process changes. What kind of policy and process changes could you envision?
You guys want to give me a lifeline on that one? I'm not sure. Let me think. Let me look at my cheat sheets here for, because we talked a lot about, that's the sewer. Let me look at this one. I don't know what, when we think about some of the things that we're hearing out of these meetings with people asking for additional enforcement, is that going to be something that PD will look at some kinds of policies or processes that they can do to help address some of that? I don't know whether, a speed limit evaluation to you means a process change or a policy change. But again, we tried to outline some of the things that we might expect would come out of this.
And I know that there are many towns that have done these safety action plans or are in the process of doing them. Have you looked at the outcomes for these and for towns similar to our town with respect to this safety plan?
Well, I think some of the towns that we've looked at are in the process of doing them. So certainly there are things we're going to be looking at, but I'm not sure have we seen anybody's done yet? I don't think so, right? Everybody's kind of somewhere on the
I know in
timeline of
Connecticut,
starting
we're kind of just starting, but other towns throughout the nation, I mean, I've seen a number of plans that have been implemented.
Have you seen some good ones you want to tell
Not
us
really.
about? Okay, all right. Well, you can tell us the ones we shouldn't look at.
Okay.
But yeah, we've been talking to some of our peer communities in the state, certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, only because I've been getting messages that the public has, I mean, there's been a cut, some of this has been cut out of what's gone on over the air. And just to follow up on some of the things that Karen just said, I just want to re-ask if I could. Are you fearful that there will be mandates placed upon the town of Greenwich as a result of doing this study that would force us to adhere to standards that, do not reflect community values and community priorities? Are you concerned that in any way, by agreeing to this plan, that we are in some way, laying ourselves open to mandates that could change our way of doing things here in Greenwich?
No.
You're not worried about that? Secondly, are there a queue of potential projects that are very popular? For example, the sidewalks at Todd Point that have already been vetted and have passed muster with the public here that could be
Can I,
eligible.
point of order, these questions have already been asked and answered, so I'm
Sorry,
not
but
really understanding why they
but
need
I'm
to be asked
asking
again.
Because I've just told you that I've gotten a couple of emails from people who have said that this has been cut, that there's been an interruption.
But then all of our remarks should be repeated,
Well, then
not
go
just
right
yours.
ahead.
I'm not sure that that's the reason to do this. I'm sorry,
Excuse me.
Mr. Weisbrod.
I got notification that GCTV was out for less than a minute.
Well, I just got word
Okay.
well, they're out for less than a minute. So I think the questions.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that your portion of it was missed.
Can the
You
answer-
are being
the questions
repetitive, sir.
out there?
I'm sorry, this is not well taken, sir, and I would object to you further speaking, and I would ask for a ruling from the chair.
I think I said
will
it.
you
You're
let
you're
the-
being repetitive here.
Will you let Amy answer the question and then we'll be
Excuse
done?
me a second,
She
Mr.
already
Conway.
has.
We lost about 15 seconds.
Okay, so there you go.
Okay.
Good.
I think your questions have been asked and answered and discussed. And 15 seconds doesn't justify having the floor again. Is there anybody who's not spoken yet? I think it's just Mr. Alfano and myself. Everybody else, I think, has had a turn. I don't intend to speak. Apparently, Mr. Alfano doesn't intend to speak. So is there any other discussion? I would ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Well, no,
I'm
I'm sorry.
sorry.
Are you asking for comments on the motion now? Because I will
Yes, I
make
was
some.
asking for any
Okay.
other discussion.
I will,
Go ahead,
I
then.
have some comments to make. I just wanted to start by saying the comments I'm about to make represent the views of all the Republicans on the BET minus the chair. I'm also making the comment that the first selectman has not spoken to any Republican member of the BET except the chair on this appropriation. Grants are great and should be used to subsidize projects, but the method by which our Department of Public Works have used these
Point of
grant
order.
programs, I'm speaking to this motion.
You're speaking to a foregone conclusion to the motion. I would think that we should take the vote first, and maybe then your comments are appropriate.
No, I'm
Because
speaking
we
to
don't-
why I'm not going to support this motion
Well,
and why the
not
Republicans
just
are not
you,
supporting
just-
this motion. So, I mean, it should be taken before the vote is taken. That's what we usually do, isn't it? We don't speak after the vote is taken.
The budget, we do.
All right, I'll remove
I've
my-
never seen that
I'll
on
remove my
this.
point. No, if you want to identify why you're not supporting this, that's,
Yeah, you didn't start out identifying why you're
Well,
not supporting
I'm
this.
doing that now. I mean, okay?
Let's keep it to
The method by
your
which.
comments,
Oh, I
please.
am. And the comments reflect the comments of the rest of the Republicans except for our chair.
I don't believe this was vetted through.
What's to
Anything.
vet? I'm making comments that I've been
You're
asked to give.
maintaining, you're making comments on your own behalf. I think, please keep it to that.
Okay, the method by which our Department of Public Works have used federal and state grants is backwards. The Department of Public Works method is find the grant first, then look for the project second. Lack of planning leads to unintended projects first, projects that have not been prioritized by our first selectman and town administrator, and can lead to unintended consequences and disruptions to our neighborhoods. A case in point is the multi-user path in Old Greenwich, another DPW project that's clearly gone wrong. Our town leaders need to provide a clear vision of what our taxpayer dollars will be spent on before a grant is applied and accepted, including those under this federal Safe Streets for All program. Having safe streets is everyone's goal, but how we get there to that goal can greatly impact and change the very fabric of our neighborhoods. Before embarking on any such program, we should first answer, what is the specific town-wide problem we are seeking to solve? Is it zero bicycle car accidents? Is it zero pedestrian deaths? Is it sidewalks in every neighborhood? Is it installing traffic cameras townwide, not just at school locations? Proponents and our first selectmen have argued that this grant will answer these questions and more, but we can't know until we spend $500,000 to develop an action plan. The action plan will be similar to a plan of conservation and development for street safety, and it will then tell us what projects we will need to get to whatever goals are set by the plan. Without accepting the $400,000 from the federal government and spending $100,000 more of our own taxpayer dollars, we will never be able to unlock billions of dollars in future grants to implement the unknown projects the action plan envisions. But there are some flaws in this assertion. First, the grant is not needed to develop a townwide plan. Indeed, the federal government has provided a template that towns can follow to develop such a plan. Perhaps the two most labor-intensive parts are the safety analysis from data that are compiled by the town and the Yukon Crash Data Depository. The second labor-intensive part is the development of policy and process changes, and the third, the development of a strategy and method for project selection. Isn't that our CIP plan? All of this can be done for minimal cost to taxpayers, and I would argue that it can be done largely in-house without expensive consultants. We have currently traffic engineers in our Department of Public Works. The just approved fiscal year 25 department annual budget provides DPW staff and operations in engineering division, streets and bridges, highway traffic operations for 78 full and 3.07 part-time equivalents. The town has completed many studies for local safety programs, and I'm not going to get into them. So as for the future grants that programs will unlock, there is no guarantees that our town will ever see these monies, as they are very competitive. Right now, 1 out of every 5 who apply for these grants are awarded them. Our town has been down a version of the Safe Street Road before. In 2007, DPW embarked on a Safe Streets program in response, and I'm quoting, to numerous concerns from its residents about speeding and excessive traffic volumes in residential neighborhoods, and requests to implement traffic calming devices or other speed reduction programs. They developed what was called the Neighborhood Traffic Calming Program, and I have a copy of the report right here. Traffic calming was to be undertaken to reduce through traffic, reduce truck traffic, excessive speed reduction, reduction of noise and air pollution, crash reduction, livability, and overall quality of life, and also provide a safer environment for pedestrians and bicyclists. The report also recognized that the negative effects of automobile traffic could not be completely eliminated. To achieve that goal, the traffic calming program focused on 3 categories: education, enforcement, and engineering. The results of that program, after 2 attempts to achieve their goal through neighborhood participation and unknown money spent, the program was suspended without any given reason. My neighborhood actually participated in that plan back in 2007. We asked for traffic safety bumps, we asked for stop signs, we asked for numerous traffic calming provisions. And do you know what we got? We got this. This was the result of our traffic calming program. So again, I'm all for grants, and I think many of us are all for grants, but we need to have a clear definition of what problem we are trying to solve. So let's understand the problem we are solving before we accept a grant to spend our tax dollars that can result in unknown future project costs. It's simply the right thing to do.
I have heard from planning and zoning that we don't have any traffic engineers in town. Commissioner Siebert, do we have a traffic engineer in the DPW?
Yes, we do.
You do, okay. It's interesting that planning and zoning doesn't necessarily avail themselves of that.
Well, they do.
They do?
They do. We use
Okay.
outsource, but
Then
we
my
also
information
use
was
our
incorrect.
folks. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
It's outsourced, right?
No.
No.
We use a combination. But we do have traffic engineers, we do make comments, but they will also use third parties, as do we for certain things, again, for,
Thank. Anybody else? Then I think, please call the roll.
No.
Alfano, Cobb,
Yes.
Jansen,
No.
Weisbrod,
Yes.
Moriarty,
Yes.
Tarkington,
No.
Fisher,
Yes.
Vasiliotis, no. Selps,
Yes.
Aurora,
No.
DeChamps,
Yes.
Alcheck.
Yes, I strongly support this.
Okay, that passes 750. Move on to PW7, please. Ms. Tarkington.
Yes, PW 7, DPW is for the Department of Public Works. It's $6,500,000, and it's an additional appropriation for the Grass Island wastewater treatment plant. So this is
We have a second.
Second.
Can we have a second, please?
I'll second.
So this is an interim request for $6,500,000 from the Sewer Improvement Fund, in this case for the Grass Island wastewater treatment plant, and it's for their primary settling tanks and upgrade project. And because they had bids which were received in April, they needed these additional funds. And this request will allow the department to move forward with the repair and renovation of this portion of the plant's treatment operation and process.
Is there any other committee that took this up?
Oh, I'm sorry, and our vote was 4-0-0. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Mention
Thank
that.
you. I should have asked specifically. Any discussion or questions on this? Mr. Selps?
I'm only, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Siebert, I'm only just confused by the timing. Why wasn't this just part of the DPW capital project? I mean, we're just coming through the budget season.
we did not have the information available to us at the time during the capital planning process to know what to put into the budget. So we had, rather than just put in some wild, crazy, put in other adjectives you want, guess, we went to bid. I think we were, we're always surprised when we get results like this back, but we've explained that the market is quite interesting these days too for all this. So it put us in this position.
I mean, did the bids, bear with me, did the bids come in faster or slower? I'm just confused
Well,
about
again,
the
when
time.
we do our capital budgets, we do our capital budgets last,
I know
here it is,
that.
we did it last fall.
Right.
And so this went out to bid in February. So we didn't have the information to change anything for the capital budget at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Ms. Moriarty?
I didn't ask this question at the Budget Committee, sorry, but what's the approximate useful life once we spend $13 million?
It depends on the elements of the project. There's equipment that's probably got a, 10 to 20 maybe, if 20 if you could eke it out, something shorter, but tankage and tank repairs and channel repairs and all have a much longer service life. What would you say, Rich, maybe?
Yeah, I would say probably the pumps, you're talking about probably closer to 20 years, but the tanks themselves, after they get rehabilitated, the influent pipe itself, you're looking at 50 years or better.
Anybody else?
Sorry, I should have turned mine off.
Do I recall, Rich, that there was some scope change in this between when you originally did it? How much of the increase do you think was due to scope change, and why was the scope changed?
So, okay, let me describe the scope change first, because I don't have the exact numbers for what that added to the project, but basically what happens is there are 5 primary settling tanks. It comes into currently right now a common aerated distribution chamber. And right now, currently, there is no way to isolate the flow in that distribution chamber. Right now, if something were to happen, it's a single point of failure. You basically lose all your tanks. You can isolate individual tanks, but you can't isolate that chamber itself. So what we decided to do during the design phase, in sitting down and looking at it holistically, as well as looking at what our operations staff, was we tasked the engineer to look at, are there ways to design this so we can isolate the chamber in more than one section? So if you have a problem, whether it be structural or mechanical, you can address that and still maintain flow in your other tanks. And they were able to achieve that. It did add complexity, it added time. It does add some additional money as well. And I'd be kind of taking a guess at exactly what that means. I would say probably,
I wouldn't even hazard a
Okay.
guess. And I think what's hard is, one of the things we've seen that I think we mentioned is especially projects that are coming out of that 2020, 19, 20, 21 time period, things changed dramatically in the world of wastewater with what we've seen with bids coming in. So we're seeing the effects of all of that. So our estimates that we maybe had back in the day, we might as well, a lot of those are not that great.
Ms. Tarkington?
So, Amy, were those regulatory changes or just, the passage of time, the kind of things?
Well, I think it's a lot of the passage of time. What Rich can tell you, he's been living for many years, is that in wastewater treatment plants, the equipment is not off-the-shelf equipment. So equipment is built specifically for your project, very long lead times. It's big. It's not like a little home sump pump. These things are as big as Rich and I. Some of this equipment bigger. You can put us together. So a lot of this stuff is very expensive. The prices have gone way up on things. Everything is up for this type of stuff. What were we seeing on the lead times of? And I think you brought it up. Other people are pre-buying. I don't think we wanted to get into that here, but it's just made things more expensive when we see these bids coming in.
Anybody else? Yes, Mr. Deschamps, please.
Just a quick follow-up to Mr. Self's questions. I just want to understand process, because this board's focused on capital budgeting. That's what we're going to be focusing on. I know in the preceding months. You sent out bids on February 29th. You received them on April 11th. I just want to understand, again, the timing of when you would have received that money, why this board wouldn't have been notified earlier than tonight or through the corresponding information you sent prior to today. We just finished a budgeting process, a lengthy one, and now to see a $6.5 million, budget item on the heels of an approved budget. I want to understand the timing of that with the dates I just gave you, and why is this not, just so I can understand, the board can understand, why is this not in next year's budget?
So the project is a project we need to do, given the age of our equipment and the condition that things are in. It's a design that's been long in the, because it's a complex design, it's taken some time to get it this far. In speaking with Rich and the team. And again, what we were trying to explain is, look, we didn't want to put in some super wild, guess. in the fall, when we go through the budget, in the fall, winter period, because we didn't have a figure at that point. It's become really interesting to try to estimate these projects. Mr. Fisher said the same thing, why didn't you tell us? We kind of hinted like, well, we have another project that's going out to bid that could be ugly, we hope not, but, we'll tell you about that. We said our pump stations are going out to bid. We have a few things where we're really, it's very interesting times right now when we put these wastewater projects out to bid with what kind of information we're getting back. So we agree that, we would have liked to have put it in there. We don't think it's wise to wait. Also because then it's only going to cost more because you'd be rebidding it because you can't hold the bids for a whole nother, what would it be, year and a half, whatever, you'd be rebidding the whole thing. So it's just going to be more because they can all see each other bids. We got 3 bids. So, and they're all tight.
Anybody else? Any discussion?
Trust me, we don't like to come either, but we wouldn't come if we didn't think it was important. I think we were looking at our records the last time we came for something of a substantial size, which was in 2014. We try not to. We'll try not to come back to you for.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we can't promise. You never know what's going to happen. But.
Call the roll, please.
Alcheck?
Yes.
DeChamps?
Yes.
Aurora?
Yes.
Selks?
Yes.
Vasiliotis, yes. Fisher?
Yes.
Tarkington?
Yes.
Moriarty?
Yes.
Weisbrod?
Yes.
Jansen?
Yes.
Kalb?
Yes.
Alfano?
Yes.
12-0-0.
Okay, that passes 12-0-0. We'll move on to FI8, which is the bonding resolution. Ms. Tarkington.
So FI8, this is for the Finance Department. This is $6,500,000. It's a bonding resolution to accompany and fund the Grass Island project.
I'll second.
And so.
Yes,
you
so
want-
report of the Budget Committee, please.
So this was handled at the Budget Committee with really no conversation, but this is 20-year debt as it is serviced by the taxes on the sewer improvement fund,
Okay.
separate from the general fund, and the vote was 4-0-0.
I have
Yes, Ms. Moriarty.
just a Scrivener's error. Wastewater is misspelled in the title, as is sewage. So they can be corrected as it goes to the RTM.
So I concur with Ms. Moriarty's comments.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Unfortunately, Karen had to step out for a phone call. I guess we just proceed to a vote.
Maybe we can do this unanimously. You could just
I
ask
thought we
that.
always took vote on bonding resolution.
Oh, do we?
I think so.
We have to.
So I'll call the roll. Mr. Alcheck?
Yes.
Mr. DeChamps?
Yes.
Ms. Aurora?
Yes.
Mr. Selves?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher is yes.
Yes,
Mrs.
Mrs. Tarkington?
Ms. Moriarty?
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod?
Yes.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Kalb?
Yes.
Mr. Alfano?
Yes.
Okay, that passes 11-0-0.
So.
So we move on to FD2, Ms. Tarkington.
Correct. Our next application is FD2 for the fire department and for $3,850,000. It's an additional appropriation for the Round Hill Volunteer Fire Company renovation.
I will second.
Okay, it's been
So-
moved and seconded. The Budget Committee, please.
So at the Budget Committee, this project was presented, and it is in total a $4,850,000 project. There is a slight increase from when we had last saw this project in December, which at that point in time did not go before the RTM, so it came back to us. So it's a total of $4,850,000, and it's being funded by contributions to the Round Here Volunteer Fire Company totaling $750,000, a state of Connecticut grant for $500,000, and the town of Greenwich is funding its share for $3,600,000. And so the request of this particular item is what we haven't yet approved, which is $3,850,000. And the Budget Committee took this item up, and we voted 4-0-0 unanimously.
Thank you. Did the Law Committee take this up?
Did we take it up? Yes, we had numerous meetings, basically on the terms and conditions and other documents that accompany this. It took a few meetings, I forget how many exactly, I think 3 or 4 maybe, where we actually, with the law department, asked Round Hill Fire Company to approve, in addition to the other paperwork, an open-ended mortgage deed and security agreement to protect the town for its investment in this building. That's included in your package, and after much going back and forth, my understanding is that the Brown Hill has executed it. And I'll let Steve also just fill in the blanks for me.
Mr. Selps? Yep.
Yes, I just want to briefly say, we balance the need to fund this project, which is not in dispute. Everybody recognizes the contribution that the Round Hill Volunteer Fire Department makes, but we needed to protect the town's investment. And so the balance that we struck, and we appreciate the flexibility that the Round Hill Volunteer Fire Department showed, was to reach this agreement. But I can say from a commercial standpoint, in terms of protecting the town's investment, the mortgage does what Ms. Fasliotis says, which is it protects the town's investment in the unfortunate event that something untoward occurs. So this was voted 2-0-0 in the Law Committee, and we supported it wholly.
Just one question that I have. Did we get oh, yes, we did. Did we get a signed copy of the mortgage? I don't see a signed copy in the package we got. Do you have a signed copy of it? Okay. Of the mortgage, yeah. We have the terms and conditions signed.
The terms and conditions are signed, but the mortgage document is here, but it'll be filed once and if the RTM does the final appropriation. And has to survive this committee
It's been
first.
signed, though. That's, yeah, okay. It's signed and notarized?
It is signed.
And not notarized yet? Okay, so I think you need to do another page and have it notarized at the time of signing, and if you need, I can notarize it after this meeting. And also if we can include it in the minutes, the signed mortgage. Thank you.
Ms. Tarkenton.
So I'd just like to say that this project has been ongoing since, I think, 2018. And, I think there've been many people involved in this project. Certainly, we want to thank David Chas, who has had various and sundry roles with the Round Hill Volunteer Fire Company, including its volunteer president, I guess. And, so my colleague, Ms. Moriarty, and certainly I think the whole center point of this whole thing has been Ben Branyan, and he really has done an incredible job of holding this together over what's now, I think, 6 years. So anyway, I do want to make sure that we give public, support and thank you to Mr. Branyan, because I think he's really done a great job on this.
Any other comments? Mr. Weisbrod?
Yeah, I also would like to thank Mr. Branyan and the Law Committee, and for the public who's listening. The reason this took so much time, I believe, at the Law Committee is that this is a privately owned facility, and it's quite unusual for a privately owned volunteer firehouse to be, in action as it is and supported. So hence, it required a lot more legal work than would otherwise have been the case. And I think the diligence on the part of our Law Committee and the thoroughness of our town administrator are tremendous and commendable.
Anybody else? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Scott, I couldn't see your hand behind the, go ahead, Mr. Callum.
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of sink down here into the woodwork. I'm also in support of this project, but I have to say, I'm kind of really shocked by the numbers, the increase that we've seen. The construction costs tripled from the original estimate. Yeah, it was 1.139791, now it's 3.37, so in my mind, that's a triple. The hardscape and landscaping went from 30,000 to 250,000, so that's almost an eightfold increase. So, I know we've had construction inflation, I know we've had, it's been a very tough time, but it looks like we were just way off base because the construction inflation has not been that strong. So, I'd love to get some comments on it, but I would also like to see that, that as this project, if it does, I expect that we will approve it, at least I will vote for it, but I would like to have regular updates, I don't know, quarterly or whatever you can do to keep us apprised of what's going on with this project to make sure that we're on target and that the costs don't continue to spiral out of control.
Just make two quick comments. You are looking at the power of passage of time. This was back, although the date is 2019, this was a twinkle in somebody's eye in 2017 with the project scope, so you do have that issue. But also just to point you to the budget evolution in the application, that middle column, prevailing wage was also a driving factor. It was originally not contemplated, but as we crossed our T's, dotted our I's, prevailing wage became a factor, but certainly let David speak to some of it as well. But those are the two major issues. And we know with COVID as well, there was a COVID issue as well. So you have time prevailing in the escalation, but the number is not lost on us. But. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I would add to that the original budget that was contemplated in December of 2018 was never a final budget. There was a timeline for us to get into that year's budget with the expectation to begin. We were still in the planning and zoning review process at that point. There were quite a few changes that were made at the P&Z level that changed things. So specifically, the landscaping and hardscaping budget was entirely a function of the planning and zoning process of things that we were required to do through P&Z and ARC that I can assure you our chief would like to take some of our landscaping down.
Okay, and
Anybody
can
else?
we get
Ms.
that,
Jansen?
sorry, just
Oh,
a
I'm
quick
sorry,
follow-up.
Scott.
Just
I thought you were done.
Can we get some commitment to get some updates as you're going along with this project if it does in fact go through?
So I don't know that that's my place to decide. I know we are working in conjunction with the town building department on this and working with Luigi closely. I'm not sure that it's my decision to say yes or no.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan.
All right, Ms. Jansen, please.
I just had a quick question. Can you help clarify what it means by prevailing wage? Why didn't you see that earlier?
We've had other projects that were not, prevailing wage did not apply. We thought since this was private property, that was going to be the first litmus test that is private property, not town property. As we dug deeper into it, it's much more complicated than just public-private. It's about the usage, and the usage of that is a fire company, which is a public interest. And so the Labor Department found that it would apply. So our original operating assumption was corrected by the state.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Mr. Olchak, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As many people know, the fire department is near and dear to my heart. And I support this project, but I also want to point out that we have held back money from the career fire departments buying equipment and at a much smaller amount of money. And so I would just ask people to sort of put things in context. You know, if this is a priority, I think, you know, having a fire truck replaced is an even greater priority. So I just, you know, keep that. I just want to ask my colleagues to keep that in the back of your minds as we go through next year's budget. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Champs,
Thank you,
please.
Mr. Chairman. Just quickly, I want to first thank the Round Hill volunteer firefighters for their work and service to the town. We'll have opportunity to do that. I just wanted a clarification on, I'm reading the terms and conditions of grant of funds to Round Hill Volunteer Fire Company dated May 24. There's a defined term in here where it talks about the project manager, the Round Hill Fire Department, Volunteer Fire Department project manager. Who is the project manager? Just quickly, if you could explain exactly who's managing this effort with the town of Greenwich.
So there are two parties involved in that. On the Round Hill side, I am the project manager for that. And then on the town side, it falls under the Building and Construction Department for Luigi Romano or his designee, who we meet regularly and sign off on all invoices together.
So are you working independently yourself on that, or do you have a committee? Is there a group? Do you feel like you have the expertise to manage this? Like, what's your background to be able to manage a project like this?
Yes, my profession is I'm an owner's representative on residential real estate, large-scale high-end residential. I've been working on this project since its inception in 2018. We do have our board at the firehouse who's involved in all decisions. We have our architects and builders on board who we are all meeting together for all decisions and all budget reviews. But yes, highly confident in our ability to manage this process.
Thank you.
Seeing no other hands, is there any objection to unanimous consent on this? Seeing none, passes 12-0-0. Next item is FI9, please, Ms. Tarkenton.
Can I just add
sorry.
before we go, you will get us a copy of the signature page.
Notarized.
And I was serious, if you need it notarized, I can do that after this meeting.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Ms. Tarkenton.
FI9, again, the Finance Department, for a bonding resolution for the Round Hill Volunteer Fire Company, and in an amount of $3,850,000.
Seconded.
And, thank you. So this, the bonding resolution is attached for this project, and it was approved 4-0-0, again unanimously in the Budget Committee.
Thank you. Any discussion? If you would call the roll, please.
Alfano,
Yes.
Kalb,
Yes.
Jansen,
Yes.
Weisbrod,
Yes.
Moriarty,
Yes.
Tarkington,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Vasiliotis, yes, Selps,
Yes.
Aurora,
Yes.
DeChamp,
Yes.
Allcheck,
Yes.
12-0-0.
Thank you. 12-0-0. We'll move on to SL1's Budget Committee, please. Ms.
So
Tarkenton.
SL1 is for the school lunch fund. It's $392,000. It's for an additional appropriation for the point-of-sale system replacement, for the additional lunch paper supply, and for increased food costs.
I will second the motion.
Been moved and second. Does anybody have questions or
So,
discussion on this? The Budget Committee report, please. Sorry.
so the Budget Committee heard the detailed presentation from our colleague in the Board of Education, who's in the Finance Department, Patrick Leo, and he described the details. You'll note that there's a school lunch. One of the interesting parts of it was talking about the food costs and other aspects of the increasing food costs and the requirements as a result of a federal audit of the foods, which further increases costs from even the name brands that we use. And in addition, there was an additional $20,000 of additional food costs. And because that does not go to the RTM and it's funds being transferred within the school lunch fund. That is not in this, so the total number was $412,000, of which this is $392,000. The Budget Committee voted 400 unanimously for this.
Any other comments or discussion? I would just note that I brought up at the Budget Committee my concern that this, and the next item, SL3, is substantially depleting the funds in school lunch, and I'm concerned about the ongoing viability of that fund, and Patrick promised to keep us appraised of, his efforts to rectify that and look at that come the fall.
Yes. So.
Yes, Ms. Moriarty?
I just had a question, because I know I think it's annually, the district has to make a decision whether it's it complies with the federal school lunch program, or do you opt out? And I know there's a financial decision that's made, as well as the impact on the offerings to the students. Can you just remind me when you make that decision, and has a decision been made for the next school year?
The decision has not been made for next school year yet. It will be in the next Board of Education meetings to follow up the discussions. We are exploring what is the kind of like the federal, the national school lunch program requirement. The proposal from us to the Board of Education is to have kind of like with the new food services director come on board, we will prepare the food from scratch, where we will kind of like make sure that the nutrition factors in the school lunch program in Greenwich will be able to compile with the national school lunch program. So that's the way that we are going to explore the opportunity for keeping Greenwich Public School in the national school lunch program.
Okay.
But decision has not been made that whether it is in or out yet.
And I just want to make the comment that I recognize it's not truly just a financial decision. There's a lot at play in there in terms of the quality of the food we want our kids to have, as well as what kinds of foods they will take advantage of. And there's a balance there. But I think the one program that we can point to during COVID, when the state funded the lunch program, on the positive impact that had both on students' well-being, not being identified, which ones get some subsidies, which ones don't, and just the fact that we know every child went to classes fed.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Mr. Cowell?
Sorry. I was confused by a piece of material, I think it was, where you talked about the components of the food, and I think it was the audit finding C, which showed that we had to pay 48% more for substantially the same food. I just didn't quite understand what this means. Is this because we had certain food we were using, but then according to the federal authorities or to the regulations, we had to change the mix of that food?
Yes.
To meet those requirements?
Yep. So for example, on the analysis that you are looking at referring to on the C, so for example, the first item, which is a normal pasta, which is kind of like the normal white color pasta that we kind of like all familiar with at the supermarket. But in order to kind of like in compliance with the school lunch program, in the USDA food requirement, it needs to be the whole grain pasta instead of the normal pasta. So the whole grain pasta, in terms of kind of like the same quantity, the unit price is more expensive than the normal pasta.
Got it. Well, I'm sorry, but the one that struck me was, this sounds really silly, but.
Ketchup.
Yes.
Yeah.
Heinz ketchup.
Yep.
Which
exactly.
was, you had to get a different kind of ketchup, which was triple the price.
Yep, so that one is kind of like if you go to some fast food chain, if you kind of like get those ketchup on the white color package, the small package white color ketchup.
Yeah.
But this one is the Heinz ketchup simply, which is kind of like lower sugar, lower calorie
It's
count
3 times
content.
more expensive? It's got
Yes.
less sugar in it. Why is it more expensive?
because it's government
It's
mandated.
the same, it's the same when you look at the second item, which is the Caesar salad dressing. The Caesar salad dressing versus the Caesar salad dressing light, the price difference also has a 20% delta. Of course, the ketchup one is more substantial in terms of the price delta, but that kind of like the cost that we need to, as I mentioned, with the food services director come on board, this whole thing will be kind of like we look at holistically as a whole to make sure that the nutrition factors, the component of the food content in serving the student at lunch will be in compliance with the overall the school lunch program requirement. So,
Is there any way we can get this back? I mean, are there other alternatives that we can use besides these recommended ones?
we will need to kind of like submit to the state, to the Connecticut State Department of Education on the overall kind of like the lunch program arrangement.
Okay.
If we just kind of like picking it item by items in the discussion with them, that will be kind of like close to impossible.
Yeah.
But overall, as a lunch program, what is the food content? How much is, what is the percentage of the starch, of the protein, of the vegetable, of the fruit, of the sugar content, all those put together as a overall program review, that will be the discussion that will be going on with the Connecticut State Department of Education.
Okay, we're getting into the weeds a little bit here.
Sorry.
but-
Thank you.
Ms. Moriarty?
I just wanted to compliment you on this. This is probably the best variance analysis we've seen on budget overruns, so thank you so much for this
Okay.
detail.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any objection to unanimous consent on this item? Seeing none, this passes 12-0-0. Patrick, just so you know, you weren't here at the beginning, but we're skipping SL2 because that was handled by the Budget Committee.
Understand.
So we're going to move on to SL3. Ms. Tarkenton, please.
Yes, SL3, which is the school lunch fund again, it's for $110,000 for an additional appropriation for ovens at Greenwich High School.
And I'll second the motion.
And so
Or the Budget Committee.
in our discussion, we learned that there had been an issue earlier in the springtime with, we'll call it a failure of the ovens, causing a need to replace one oven. There was also some other related, I guess, issues. And so as a result, they determined that all three ovens should be replaced. And so this is the request for the replacement of the ovens. This was approved 4-0-0 by the Budget Committee.
Adding a little bit, that is kind of like an accident happened in the Greenwich High School kitchens because of the ovens. The cook using the ovens to bake the cookies, kind of like when you open the doors, her shoulder get hurt, and then was referred to the occupational therapies. And the Town of Greenwich Human Resource Department has done an accident investigations. And then it is, the corrective action is to replace the ovens in the Greenwich High School.
Any discussion? Yes.
Brad, could you get the door, please? They're vacuuming outside and it's a little distracting. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to unanimous consent on this item? Seeing none, it passes 12-0-0. Thank you, Patrick.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Oh, I thought he was coming up to speak again. All right, we'll move on to Nathaniel Witherell, NW5. Ms.
Okay,
Tarkenton,
so
please.
our next two items with Nathaniel Witherell, NW5 is for $477,000. It's an additional appropriation for galvanized pipe replacement.
And I'll second the motion.
And
Report of the
so,
Budget Committee, please.
so this item was presented to the Budget Committee, and there is some detail attached to this particular request, saying that the pipe removal and replacement was $250,000. The material cost $85,000. Prep and finish work to the wall area, $77,000, and painting, $65,000, since it impacts the rooms, for a total of $477,000. This also accelerated what was originally presented to the Budget Committee in the fiscal year '25 budget. So, I mean, it accelerated the future years. It was originally presented as only the fiscal year '25 transaction. This now covers all years. And so this was discussed by the Budget Committee, and the vote was 3-1, and the motion passed.
Anybody else take this up? I don't believe so. Any discussion, questions? It appears not. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Calvo, I can't see your hand when it's back here.
I'm still
Trying
sinking
to put
into
it
the
forward.
woodwork here. So I mean, obviously, we need to, we can't afford to have a breakage in the sewage pipes. We have to fix it. And they from the pictures that were provided, it looks like the situation is indeed pretty dire. My only question was, replacing these old galvanized pipes with new galvanized pipes, is that the sort of the expert option? I'm just wondering, do you use PVC pipes or are there other pipes? I mean, it just looks like galvanized pipe is going to continue to fall into this kind of a condition. I know that these days they're using newer type of pipes, but I'm not an expert, so I'm just.
No, the probability will be that we use PVC. We would not use galvanized piping again for these particular lines.
Right, so they will be replaced, you think, with PVC?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what is anticipated at this point in time.
Okay,
I do not anticipate a change in that.
okay, thanks.
Ms. Jansen, did you have your hand up? Oh, okay. Ms. Target.
So it's my understanding that this now is on a sheet that says this is fiscal year '25. And Mr. Geiger, did you confirm that this would be placed in the fiscal year '25 budget? And I believe that we talked about this at Budget Committee, and this was, works fine with the Nathaniel Witherall?
That's correct.
And that it just gives you time to get ready and get everything done. So I just wanted to confirm that this will be a fiscal year '25 item.
Ms. Moriarty.
And I just wanted to ask a question. We talked about it at the Budget Committee, but just so the full BET has the picture as well, that it is, one, you don't know exactly where the worst conditions are of this pipe, but that it's also more efficient to do the entire project at one time.
But that's correct. I mean, the pictures that I think all of you saw were from various parts of the building. So as we saw a leak or a problem, we replaced it. So it's impossible to anticipate where the next leak will be. So the only really way to do it correctly is to do it all at once.
Anybody else? Ms. Vasiliotis.
Yeah, could you just confirm that the $477,000 is the all-in price and that it's basically your?
That is, and that includes what we anticipate any contingencies also, yes.
Okay, so you're not coming back for more?
No.
Okay.
If we can come back and give you back some, we'd be happy to do that.
We'd like a refund. No.
All right, I think we need a record vote on this. If you would call the roll, please.
Sure, make me work. Okay, all check.
Yes.
DeChamp.
Yes.
Aurora.
Yes.
Selps.
I'm making you do your work, yes.
Vasiliotis, yes. Fisher.
Yes.
Tarkington.
No.
Moriarty.
Yes.
Weisbrod.
Yes.
Jansen.
Yes.
Cal.
Yes.
Alfano.
Yes.
It's 11-1.
That passes 11-1-0. We're down to NW6. Ms. Tarkington, please.
Yes. Just give me 1 second here. NW6, again for Witherall, it's for $225,000. It's for an additional appropriation for the sewer drain replacement.
Second the motion.
Been moved and seconded. A report of the Budget Committee, please.
So again, similar to our last, we did have a brief report from an engineer that looked at this. And this is for the descale and lining of the sewer pipe. And the vote was
I think it was
3-1.
3-1.
3-1. And that's motion passed.
Any discussion, questions?
I'd just like to make a comment. if
Yeah,
I may.
Mr. Selps?
So I just want to commend the Nathaniel Witherell Board. These items, both NW5 and NW6, were originally in the budget, the full budget for last year. And the board, through its chair, Mr. Markowitz, and through its finance chairman, Mr. Kelly, came to Mr. Alfano and myself, and they said that they just weren't comfortable that the numbers they had were correct. And they said they were working on them. And as you may recall, Mr. Fisher, I actually moved that these items be removed from the fiscal year 25 budget because there weren't good numbers. But I think that it's a sign of the turnaround in terms of what I'll call financial competence at the Nathaniel Witherell, that they're coming back tonight with numbers that they believe in. And I think that's a pleasant departure from past policy, and I wanted to take that opportunity to laud them for doing so.
Anybody else?
Mr. Fisher, I could just make one
Certainly.
comment for clarification. On the cast iron pipe, that is something that we're looking at either lining or replacing, but in either event, whichever is the most efficacious, will still fall in with that budget. So I just want to make that clear that that's an option.
Thank you. And these also, Mr. Geiger, will be fiscal 25? Good, thank you. Guess we need to call the roll again, please.
Alfano,
Yes.
Kalb,
Yes.
Jansen. Yes. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Moriarty,
Yes.
Tarkington,
No?
Fisher,
Yes.
Vasiliotis, yes, Selps,
Yes.
Aurora,
Yes.
DeChamp,
Yes.
Polchak,
Yes.
11-1-0.
11-1-0, that passes. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms.
Before we
Moriarty?
move on to the controller's report, I want to ask the controller and the budget director a question about the financing of those two projects. They're coming from Nathaniel Witherell's fund balance. I know in the past we've used long-term bonding for investments in Nathaniel Witherell. Is that something that we can take up later if necessary, or did you determine that from fund balance is the appropriate?
I think fund balance, I mean, the ones we've bonded have been significantly larger. Like, since the project Renew, the only other ones we've bonded are like over $1 million.
Okay. I hadn't
Okay.
thought about it before tonight, but thank you.
Ms. Tarkington?
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if, and I know that we have a public hearing, but it's been going on for a long time, if it would be nice for Mr. Fairborn to have these community development block grant items moved ahead of the next two reports, but that's, I don't know whether that creates an issue with the public hearing.
Technically, we're not supposed to move things
Okay.
around the agenda. Then I think we can go quickly through the controllers and treasurers' reports, but thank you for the idea. Sorry, Tyler.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, BET members. I'll be quick. Just two sets of comments. If you can go to page 2, the controller's report, the update, first of all, on May 8th, there was not a large, but a water break on the Coscob Elementary School on the 3rd floor. What's presented in here is all I have. I do not have an update. The risk manager is trying to coordinate the claims adjuster getting on site and working with the GPS, Greenwich Public School people, to assess the damages. I did speak with a current town administrator, Ben Branyan. He gave me 2 bits of information, one related to this. He said that they feel that they can cover this with existing funds, and additionally, the good news is that he had said that he's been told by the staff at the Greenwich Public Schools that they're going to return about $1.4 million. So they have the funds to deal with this internally. And that's also good news. A question Ms. Moriarty asked me about a week ago about fund balance. I had the GPS coming back at break even, so instead of a 0 to a negative 1 million deficit, it's up to 0 plus in that situation. So that's good for the fund balance. And the final comment here is if you go above it, the Havmeyer Building water damage claim, this claim is well over a year old. It's finally being closed. It's been in my controller's report for over a year. This process, it takes forever to go from start to end as far as is the process being closed out. And I'll give you the classic example. Last year in 22-23, we got our final payment from Superstorm Sandy, which is probably about 13 years old, but that's an extreme. Any questions on the controller's report?
Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
So I move that we accept the controller's report.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded without objection. That passes 12-0-0. Thank you.
Okay, one quick comment on the treasurer's report. At the recommendation of the Investment Advisory Committee, we've reformatted it. If you go to the bottom of the page, you can see now there's a subtotal and a total. We've broken out the OPEB trust fund. The difference between all the numbers above the subtotal, all the funds, they are cash balances. The OPEB fund are market values for the investments at the end of each month. I'll take any questions on the treasurer's report.
Any questions or comments? Entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the treasurer's report.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded without objection. Passes 12-0-0 to accept the treasurer's report. We're now at the point to close the public hearing. I don't see anybody who would want to be heard for the public hearing. So do I just close this? We don't need a motion to close it, do we?
No.
Okay, I'm closing the public hearing. We'll move on to item 8,
So-
request for budget adjustments, non-routines, CD1 and CD1. They're both under CD1. But a report of Ms. Tarkington, please.
So CD1 for the community development block grant, $752,351.81. This is the approval to use the CDBG HUD entitlement.
I'll second.
And so,
Moved and seconded, a report of the Budget Committee.
so the Budget Committee met with Mr. Fairbairn, Tyler Fairbairn, and he described the process that's used annually and the involvement of many, or 2 BET members, many RTM members, and others to come up with the proposed budget. And then he went through the details of the public service activities, which today total $121,181, and also the public facility housing activities, which total $495,323.81. And basically, I think there was a minor adjustment to these numbers because we didn't get quite as much money from HUD. And so he presented this updated listing, which is in our package today. And the Budget Committee approved this 4-0-0 unanimously.
Any discussion or questions? Yes, Mr. Callum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question about, I noticed that the Greenwich United Way Early Childhood Achievement Gap got a 0 allocation. This is in the public service activities. And the family centers, also early care education program also got a 0. So would you just care to, I know we can't do everything, but we seem to have a policy of trying to give something to most of these programs. So it just seemed to me it leapt out at me that these were 2 child care programs here, early child care, that we didn't fund. So is there a reasoning there?
Yeah, so I believe the board's recommendation for those activities, what they try to do when you have somebody who has multiple applications, as family centers did on the public service side, typically only one of those will be funded just due to the limits we have in funding in that area. HUD limits us to, it's usually 15%. Greenwich is an exception community. 16.25% of the total can go to those activities. They set a $5,000 floor. That's the minimum they'll give out. So if somebody has multiple applications, they'll typically just fund one of them unless there overall are fewer applications. They can cover them all. And then on the United Way application, I believe the advisory committee's thinking there was that the United Way is also a grant-giving organization. They fund a number of the organizations that we fund through CDBG, and I believe they didn't feel entirely comfortable giving them a grant, which I understand was for that program, but then in theory they're giving money back out to similar organizations.
I see. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay. Any objection to unanimous consent on this? So that passes 12-0-0. We now have the resolution. Ms. Tarkington.
Yep. So this grant was also accompanied by a resolution, CD1, a community development block grant. The $752,351.81 was the resolution.
Seconded.
And so this resolution was quickly addressed by the Budget Committee, and the vote was 4-0-0.
Thank you. Law Committee?
We actually didn't review this. But I do have, it wasn't presented to us. I do have a question on the second page where it's the second further resolved, the next to the last sentence where it says PY 2024. I know what it means, but it hasn't been defined anywhere in this document. And I don't know whether it's worth spelling it out with it in quotations or, I mean, what are they called? Anyway, or you defining it earlier in the document when it's first used. Because I know that it means program year, but I don't know that I think it would get a little confusing for the RTM. Do you see where I'm talking?
Absolutely, yeah. I was just double checking it. I think that's a good catch, and I am happy to update this before we submit it to the RTM. If that's, I mean, I think it goes to the RTM from here.
Yeah,
and then they
it's
make
just basically a Scrivener's error, so I don't think, I mean, we don't need to see it again. Just
Absolutely, that makes sense.
define it somewhere. Okay.
Okay, any other discussion or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to say that this is one of these two items are some of my favorite things to look at in the budget process, and also previously when I was at the RTM, it's great to see the town contributing to all of these worthy causes. And I really appreciate your efforts on this, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any objection to unanimous consent on this? Seeing none, that passes 12-0-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
We'll now move to item 9, standing committee reports. We have an investment advisory committee report from Ms. Aurora, please.
Thanks, Harry. Okay, so the IAC actually had a very busy first 5 months and start of the year. I know we came to this full BET in February with a brief update, but because there's a lot, I'm going to try and summarize this in bullet points, and if anyone has any questions, we can ask at the end. Just as a background for the public and for some of our new BET members, the reason we're here is because Vanguard, who is our OCIO on the OPEB Trust, sold the OCIO business to Mercer, announced in December 2023. Mercer is a financial consulting firm, and they completed their acquisition in March 2024. Mercer does not manage public pensions. Accordingly, we needed to hire a new OCIO to manage the assets of our OPEB trust. And Vanguard, our current OCIO, agreed to continue to service this account until June 2024. to allow us time to transition. A brief timeline of between January and May, kind of what we've accomplished and what we've done, just milestones. And just to remind everyone, December 2023, when Vanguard first announced that their business was being sold, the prior BET's IAC committee did issue an RFP. In January of 2024, the newly seated IAC reconstituted the RFP evaluation committee to include the new IAC members, Elliot Alchek, David Alfano, myself, and Scott Kalb, and we issued a new RFP. In February, prior to issuing the new RFP, the IAC took the opportunity to update the town's investment policy statement. In March and April of 2024, the evaluation committee issued a new RFP, which referenced the updated IPS and further requested additional information with more detailed specifics around performance and asset allocation. 8 firms responded to this RFP. In May of 2024, we interviewed 4 of these firms on Monday, May 6th, and we voted on a finalist on Monday, May 13th. Purchasing is currently working with legal on negotiating these contracts, and we will reveal the name of this finalist once legal has completed all negotiations. Some quick important details, executing this contract and getting onboarded with the new OCIO is likely going to push us past the June 13th deadline of the Vanguard transition. Our assets will stay at Vanguard brokerage account, and the account will convert to self-managed account until a new OCIO is on board. The town treasurer, along with the OPEB board, which is Scott and myself, will continue to monitor the portfolio beyond the June deadline, but the board does not intend to make any changes to investment strategy or asset allocation until the new OCIO has been onboarded. Again, we'll give more information on who that finalist is once legal and purchasing have finalized negotiations. And finally, I want to thank my colleagues, Scott Kalb, David Alfano, and Elliot Alchek for really adjusting their vacation schedules, work schedules. We had a ton of meetings and worked many hours to get this done and really work in a tight deadline to make this happen. So thank you to my colleagues.
Thank you. I just would also make a footnote to that this, remind everybody, this was an entirely new committee. Nobody had served on the Investment Advisory Committee, and the chair and the other members picked up the ball and did a great job. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I do have one question, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Selps?
So it sounds like you've done a terrific job. When do you anticipate that you'll have the new agreement with the new provider? Do you anticipate it'll be before our August recess, or?
I would think so. I think the real bottleneck is going to be legal, figuring it out with the finalists. And once legal blesses it, I think the transition will be quite quick.
Great, thank you.
Seeing nothing else, I believe, Ms. Targan, you had a report on the Budget Committee?
Yes, really, a couple quick topics. First, the BET members individually last week received a letter from RTM District 11 Chair, signed by the district members, and RTM District 11's request, and I quote, expresses support for the BET to hold the DPW to the fiscal year 24 budget original conditions set forth and agreed upon between the BET and DPW prior to the release of $3 million funding for this project. And the committee chair asked that we discuss it in Budget Committee, then I guess missed the date, and so we're doing it this way. The bridge construction is really a ways off. It's probably at least 6 months. The second item is really a tour of the Grass Island wastewater treatment plant. I think that was requested at the Budget Committee meeting, which Feminella responded immediately with 3 alternative dates and for an alternative tour, and or 3 alternative dates for an hour tour. And I think this is important that if we can, do this, because when you look at the future annual funding request for the Grass Island Asset Management Plan, the items budgeted are an amount similar to or greater than this month's request, and those requests will be appearing annually. So this is a good opportunity to learn more about the process.
Thank you. I don't have any liaison reports checked off. If anybody has one, let me know. Under special project team reports in the CMS Building Committee, I can report that today The tree warden issued his ruling from the hearing last week, and he has approved removal of all 188 trees. That includes all the trees in the rock outcropping. So the issue that has been a hot button has been resolved. The rock outcropping will be removed, and as a reminder, that costs less than keeping it. But I'll also note that in his ruling, there is to be a 2-year maintenance agreement with the contractor that will provide watering for all the landscape material for 2 years. So there's quite a mandate there. The number of trees being removed is 188. The number of trees being implemented is 306, plus all the shrubbery. So that's quite a mandate from the tree warden. I'll also note that the issue of the chair is yet to be resolved, but will be a topic of tomorrow morning's CMS Building Committee. Again, we will take up the issue of the chair and trying to move a transition along in a faster manner. That is on Zoom at 8 o'clock. I thought I saw Mr. Alfano has a question.
When will they be removing the rock?
I don't think that gets removed until the building comes down, because you can't really do much rock work close to the old part of the building because of the risks of the building. So, and it doesn't have to come down until it comes down in order to make room for the fields.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, in the packet was a report from Old Greenwich from Mr. Selps. Is anything to add to that, or any questions?
Well, the report speaks for itself. A couple of further notes. The Old Greenwich School Building Committee is working on getting its grant application ready for the to be filed with the state. As I think all of you know, that report has to be filed. That application has to be filed by June 30th. The committee is well on its way to doing that. It is finalizing its final site plan for P&Z approval. Anticipates filing that with P&Z in early June. We did have another tour for interested parents earlier this month. So, I mean, under the leadership of its chair, James Waters, the committee continues to make steady progress. And formally, and I think it's in the report, formally the committee has declared the design development phase completed, and the primarily the construction manager and the owners are working on developing the construction drawings, which ultimately will become the source of the bidding documents that will be sent out presumably later this summer.
Thank you. Anything else under item 11? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 12, old business, which is the final read on the annual report for 2022-23 and hopefully approval. We need to take a vote on that. Is there any discussion on that?
Shall I make a motion, and then we
Sure.
can? I move that we approve the annual report.
I'll second that. If there's no objection to unanimous consent, that's approved 12-0-0. We'll now move on to new business of setting the mill rate. I mean, not done this before. How do we, this is not on the agenda with the specifics. Do Mr. Geiger or Mr. Minarski actually put forward this?
The resolutions have to be read into the record by the clerk.
I know, I have to find it.
Okay.
Page 213.
I have it in the package, but it's not really organized.
You want me to get a copy?
I got it. I just found it. Okay. Town of Greenwich Board of Estimate and Taxation Resolution for General Fund Tax on Assessment Lists of October 1st, 2023 for fiscal year 2024-2025. Resolved that the Board of Estimate and Taxation hereby approves the tax at the rate of 11.712 mils on the dollar, and the same is hereby approved, levied, and laid upon the assessment list of the Town of Greenwich last completed as the tax for said town's general fund for the succeeding fiscal year, to wit, for the fiscal year July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. Resolved that the chairman and clerk of the Board of Estimate and Taxation shall forthwith file a certificate of the levying and laying of such tax so approved by the Board of Estimate and Taxation with the town clerk, who shall record such certificate in the town meeting record book, and the clerk of the Board of Estimate and Taxation shall obtain a receipt from the town clerk that this has been done. Approved by the Board of Estimate and Taxation, May 20th, 2024.
So I'll move the approval.
Well,
Oh, no.
I moved it. You
Seconded then.
Okay.
Moved by Ms. Vasiliotis, seconded by Ms. Tarkington. Any discussion? Seeing none, I think we need a record vote on this. Oh, I'm sorry. Any discussion? My mic was off. Seeing none, I think we need a record vote on this, please.
Alfano.
Yes.
Kalb.
Yes.
Jansen.
Yes.
Weisbrod.
Yes.
Moriarty.
Yes.
Tarkington.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Vasiliotis, yes. Salps.
Yes.
Aurora.
Yes.
DeChamp.
Yes.
Polcheck.
Yes.
1200.
1200, thank you. So next we have the sewer maintenance fund resolution.
Yes, we do. Okay, Town of Greenwich Board of Estimate and Taxation Resolution for Sewer Maintenance Fund Tax on Assessment List of October 1st, 2023 for fiscal year 2024-2025. Resolved that the Board of Estimate and Taxation hereby approves a tax at the rate of 0.174 mils on the dollar, and the same is hereby approved, levied, and laid upon the assessment list of the Town of Greenwich last completed as the tax for said town sewer maintenance fund for the succeeding fiscal year, to wit, for the fiscal year July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. Resolved that the chairman and clerk of the Board of Estimate and Taxation shall forthwith file a certificate of the levying and laying of such tax so approved by the Board of Estimate and Taxation with the town clerk, who shall record such certificate in the town meeting record book, and the clerk of the board and the Board of Estimate and Taxation shall obtain a receipt from the town clerk that this has been done. Approved by the Board of Estimate and Taxation, May 20th, 2024. I would add that there are two Scrivener errors. After the third line of the first paragraph, there's a dash that I don't think should be there with a comma. And then the semicolon should, the colon should be a semicolon, not a colon at the end of that sentence. So if those two can be fixed.
All right, so you're moving that?
I'm moving that as well. And I'm also adding that for the previous resolution that we just approved, the same errors, Scrivener errors are in those as well.
And I'll second that motion.
Moved by Ms. Vasiliotis, seconded by Ms. Tarkington. Any discussion? Seeing none, I think, again, we need a record vote on this.
Yes, we do. All check.
Yes.
Champs.
Yes.
Aurora.
Yes.
Selps.
Yes.
Vasiliotis, yes. Fisher.
Yes.
Tarkington.
Yes.
Moriarty.
Yes.
Weisbrod.
Yes.
Jansen.
Yes.
Kalb.
Yes.
Alfano.
Yes.
1200.
1200, we'll move on to the sewer improvement fund, please.
This is painful because I'm reading tax increases. Okay. Town of Greenwich Board of Estimate and Taxation resolution for sewer improvement fund tax on assessment list of October 1st, 2023 for fiscal year 2024-2025. Resolved that the Board of Estimate and Taxation hereby approves a tax at the rate of 0.050 mils on the dollar, and the same is hereby approved, levied, and laid upon the assessment list of the Town of Greenwich last completed, and again, there's a Scrivener's error there, as the tax for said town's sewer improvement fund for the succeeding fiscal year, to wit, for the fiscal year July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025, Scrivener's error again. Resolved that the chairman and clerk of the Board of Estimate and Taxation shall forthwith file a certificate of the levying and laying of such tax so approved by the Board of Estimate and Taxation with the town clerk, who shall record such certificate in the town meeting record book, and the clerk of the Board of Estimate and Taxation shall obtain a receipt from the town clerk that this has been done, approved by the Board of Estimate and Taxation, May 20th, 2024. Roland, can I also add that the Board of Estimate and Taxation should be bolden in each of those resolutions? It's not currently, just to be consistent. Thank you.
Do you move that?
Yes, I've moved that.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? We take a record vote, please.
Okay, just needed to write that down. Alfano.
Yes.
Kalb.
Yes.
Jansen.
Yes.
Weisbrod.
Yes.
Moriarty.
Yes.
Tarkington.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Vasiliotis, yes. Selps.
Yes.
Aurora.
Yes.
DeChamps.
Yes.
All check.
Yes.
1200.
It's 1200. Next on the agenda, there was some minor corrections to the budget resolution by the RTM. The corrected resolution is in the packet. I would move the corrected resolution for adoption by the board,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Tarkington. Any discussion? We need a record on this, or do you want to outline the changes?
Yeah, I attended the Legislative and Rules Committee meeting along with Mr. Selps, and the changes that are reflected reflect a change to the General Government Senior Center, which now is known as the Wallace Senior Center, and the Friends of what was formerly known as the Greenwich Civic Senior Center is now known as the Friends of the Wallace Senior Center, Inc. The other change was just basically a Scrivener's error in E of the ARPA part of it, APRA instead of ARPA, so that change was also made.
Okay, any other discussion on this? I guess we need a record vote since it's a resolution.
Sure. All check?
Yes.
DeChamp?
Yes.
Aurora?
Yes.
Selps?
Yes.
Vasiliotis, yes. Fisher?
Yes.
Tarkington?
Yes.
Moriarty?
Yes.
Weisbrod?
Yes.
Jansen?
Yes.
Kalb?
Yes.
Alfano?
Yes.
So that's
1200.
1200. Similar, we need to approve an amended bonding
Chairman?
resolution. Sorry.
Second bullet's not necessary. There was no changes to the dollar amounts of the bonding resolutions. This was a duplication, so there is no vote on the bonding resolutions.
Oh, okay. We'll save some work there. So we'll move on to item 14, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of April 15th of 2024, which are in your packet. Are there any amendments to the meeting minutes for April 2024? Seeing none, any objection to unanimous consent?
Were they moved and seconded?
Oh, I'm sorry, I guess I'll move it.
Second.
It's been
Second.
moved- It's been moved and seconded by Ms. Tarkington. Any discussion? Seeing none, any objection to unanimous consent for the approval of the minutes of April 15th? Seeing none, that's adopted 1200.
Just to correct the record, it was moved by Fisher, seconded by Tarkington.
Tarkington, right.
Okay.
Okay, we then have the minutes of the BET Decision Day 3 on April 8th of 2024, which I'll move. That was-
Second.
We've moved by Fisher, seconded by Tarkington. Any changes, corrections?
Just the document in our packet shows the changes from an initial draft that maybe everybody didn't see, but I want to make sure that on the motion for Nathaniel Witherell, which it's on page 224 in our packet, but that the actual change is made, the number of our Nathaniel Witherell fund is $33,857,840. Right now, it was a question in what was included in the packet. And that, so that, with that one change in the document that we've submitted, they look good.
Okay, is that understood, Samantha? Okay. All right, with that minor correction, So any further discussion, corrections, amendments? Seeing none, any objection to unanimous consent as altered by Ms. Moriarty? Seeing none, that's 1200.
And if, can I just
yes,
make a comment? Because
go
we're
ahead.
behind in our minutes. I noticed that I don't know if decision day 1 and 2 were approved by this board. I think that some had been circulated. So I think between now and the June meeting, if we can pay attention to what minutes still need to come before the committee.
Okay. I don't have a chair report this evening. I don't think we have any other business, so take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So
Second.
moved by Mr. Selps. Was that a second from Alfano? Any objection to unanimous consent? All in favor, 1200.